There must be something in the gene pool of the hard political left in this country. Eventually, the violence arrives.
Oh! I cannot believe what I'm seeing. I'm looking at people, violence. Look at this. They're throwing things at each other. They're pepper spraying each other. How are they allowed to have weapons on campus?
Early April 30, pro-Palestinian activists wearing masks and all-black clothing broke into and took over Hamilton Hall. This followed an email days before from Columbia University administrators saying they would not call in the police because they wanted to avoid further inflaming what is happening on their besieged campus.
What are university officials waiting on? What do they need to see before they stand up to these terrorist sympathizers? And that is exactly what they are.
They're organized. When they show up and they all have the same kind of tents, when they all are from out of state in many of these places where they're showing up.
This is the New York City Police Department.
At 9 p.m. April 30, the NYPD arrived in massive numbers.
This is how they're going to go into Hamilton.
They entered Hamilton through a second-floor window, arrested the so-called students, and put them on police buses. With luck, they'll actually be prosecuted and expelled from Columbia.
We'll do what we always done. We'll get arrested, just like the criminals in the subway. They're always right back out in 24 hours.
So it really is 1968 all over again, or more relevant, 2020 and the George Floyd protests. But this is not spontaneous. This is modern protest as produced by the cookie cutter of social media. Almost a day earlier, a group called Columbia University Apartheid Divest posted on Instagram a call for an urgent mobilization at Hamilton Hall. Previously, the group had said, "We will not move until Columbia meets our demands or we are moved by force." It's the most basic flip-the-script tactic. The perpetrators of mayhem transform themselves into camera-ready victims of state violence. The encampment's defenders claim this protest is animated by conditions in Gaza. The fact remains that Gaza is inseparable from Hamas and Iran, two entities in a network dedicated to attacking the U.S. All of a sudden, we have pro-Palestinian encampments spread across a U.S. with a porous, overwhelmed southern border. Given the threat, one can only hope the FBI and Department of Homeland Security are alert.
You know, there is a particular network that has, where some of the overseas facilitators of the smuggling network have ISIS ties that we're very concerned about. Exactly what that network is up to is something that's, again, the subject of our current investigation.
Some claim that the majority of student protesters are peaceful kids moved only by concern for the Gazans. But it's difficult not to see how adeptly the media has been manipulated to shape public impressions of these encampments.
I'm a Jewish student. I feel very, very safe here. And any antagonism, any contention really comes from the outside and comes from people not understanding and making a lot of assumptions about what it means to believe in Palestinian liberation when ultimately this fight is about a fight for justice and for peace.
The protesters know that if they can repeat earnest declarations of humanitarian concern often enough, an equivalence of sincerity between pro-Palestinian students and Jewish students will come to dominate the media narrative. And that, in turn, suppresses the historical context of these protests, the impossible mission of Israeli-Palestinian negotiations that have gone on for decades, and today rest with the virtually irrelevant Mahmoud Abbas, who said this about October 7th.
Israel took advantage of that attack to retaliate disproportionately against the people of Gaza under the pretext that it wants to take revenge of Hamas. But in fact, what it is doing, it is taking a revenge from the Palestinian people as a whole. It is killing civilians.
The students' naivete and willful ignorance about the realities of the Middle Eastern peace process is the benign explanation.
We are inspired by Columbia. We are inspired by UCLA and UT Austin.
More cynical is what has emerged as the activists' primary interest, forcing university endowments to divest from Israeli companies, which has little to do with the aftermath of October 7th.
Because what we're really protesting here is also the immense influence that Boeing has at Portland State University. Yes. It has a complete pipeline from students from the School of Business and from the School of Engineering to become truthfully like architects of of future wars.
The anti-Israeli BDS movement, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, emerged around 2002. Its most pernicious tactic was to ban Israeli scholars from academic conferences at U.S. universities and elsewhere. When you hear people say anti-Semitism has been building in the universities for years, this is what they are talking about.
Joe Biden, far-left Democrat governors like my home state in New York, and morally bankrupt university leaders have allowed this moral rot of anti-Semitism to fester, refusing to enforce the laws and refusing to ensure the safety of Jewish students. And it's not just Columbia. This is a moral rot that has taken root across American higher education institutions.
Today, the Biden re-election team assumes an equivalence between younger Democratic voters and the Gaza encampment occupants. As a result, the American president has himself become a hostage to the hardest of the U.S.'s hard left.
There are things that are being called anti-Semitic that are not anti-Semitic.
Joe Biden won't cross them, and they know it. Constant demonstrations undermine 1968 Democratic candidate Hubert Humphrey. Unless Joe Biden separates himself from the violence-prone left, his candidacy could end in Chicago this August.
This must end now.